guide us through a roll call, just so we know how close we are exactly to the quorum?
Yeah, great idea. I'll start at the top, of course, best place to start. Mr. Jamil Dada, Mr. Angelo Farouk, Mr. Michael Gallo, Mr. Stephen Levy, Bob Redlow.
Here.
Right. Bruce Stensley.
Here.
Hello, Bruce. Joseph Williams.
Present.
John Brower. Diane Factor. The amazing Jeremy Smith.
Here.
Director Rita Sines.
Here.
Shani Weber on behalf of Eloy Oakley, Chancellor.
Present. Hello.
Abby Schnee on behalf of Secretary Julie Sue.
I'm here.
And Carol Zabin. Not here. We have Mr. Dada. We have a quorum. Hi, Jamil.
Hi.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Happy New Year. It's our first meeting of the year. Delighted to see everyone again. So I just, as we have in the past, I want to provide just some critical notes about our meeting process today. As you are aware, our meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform. Only executive committee members and staff are going to be on the platform itself. Our public can view this meeting via live stream on the California Workforce Development Board YouTube page. A link to the YouTube page, meeting agenda, board packet information can be found on our website, which is cwdb.ca.gov under State Board Meetings and Archives. Although if you're hearing this message, you probably have already done that. A recording is going to be staying on the YouTube page for the future reference as well. There is a slight delay between the Zoom meeting and the live stream of approximately 20 to 30 seconds. It's to censor out any potential swearing from our director, Tim Rainey.
See a couple of meetings and he gets a sense of humor already.
Have to be with everything going on in the country. Public comment is now open and can be accepted via email at boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov. I'll announce when the public comment period is closed, and am mindful to allowing extra time for emails to come through. All emails will be read aloud during the public comment period as noted on the agenda and will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. The first public comment is on the one action item, approval of the October 14th Executive Committee meeting summary. Tim, I don't know if I've seen that comment.
I don't know that there is one yet. Have we gotten a comment yet, Curtis? Or Jeff?
Maybe that information was copied and pasted from a prior.
I think it was. Apologies for that.
That's okay. So they'll be read at the end of the meeting if we do receive any. We have not received any to date. I appreciate if everyone can remain on mute, just so we don't have background noise, and I'm happy to recognize everyone. The chat feature is the most convenient way to request to speak. If you just want to type in speak, for me to recognize. And then also, if from an efficiency standpoint, if you prefer to write your questions in the chat, we can respond and follow up that way as well. I do want to note again that anything typed in the Zoom chat box is included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. So we'll start with our action items, beginning with the October 14th meeting summary. The meeting summary starts on page 3 of our agenda packet. Does anybody have any questions or is there any discussion? Mr. Rainey, is there any public comment?
Don't believe there is.
I move approval of the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Dada. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Redlow. All in favor?
I had
Aye.
requested to speak, Angelo.
Oh,
Chair.
so sorry. I just pulled up the chat. Sorry, my apologies. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to request for a correction of spelling of my first name in the minutes. There's a couple of places where it's referenced on page 1, and then in the Section H ends the stabilization fund grant.
Our sincere apologies. Staff will make that adjustment, and that amendment will be noted as part of the motion then by you, Ms. Weber. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and apologies.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions before we proceed to the vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
If we can.
Aye.
Any abstentions or nays? Okay, motion carries.
I abstain.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sines. Director Sines abstains. Our next agenda item is our updates and discussion. We'll begin with Curtis regarding our Workforce Development Board staff update.
Chairman Farouk, if you don't mind, could I just take a second and welcome Director Rita Sines, newly appointed by Governor Newsom. Please join me in welcoming Director Sines to the Executive Committee, of course, and the State Workforce Board, but also, of course, to the state of California.
And
our
Director
team.
specifically of the the Employment Development Department.
That's correct.
Welcome, Director Sines. You're on mute.
This is my fourth department. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you so
Fantastic.
much. Our state is very fortunate to have your leadership, and thank you, Mr. Rainey, for mentioning that. We'll turn it over to Curtis now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Director Sines. Good morning, members of the Executive Committee. Curtis Knotson with the Workforce Development Board. Just want to provide a quick staffing update that we've been including in our meetings. And there's also a written copy of this information in your board packet under item 3A. And I'll go over it quickly. We have two departing team members from the Workforce Development Board. Camila Howard was a staff services analyst in our program unit. Also, Patrick Getz was a consultant to us. He was actually a CDT employee, but was managing our CalSkills project that many of you are familiar with. We have several new team members at the Workforce Board, and I hope you'll join me in welcoming Tina Casey, who's a staff services analyst in our administrative branch, Miles Cobb, who is a student assistant in our administrative branch, and Megan Vogt, who's a student assistant in our administrative branch also. We've also brought on a new IT manager. Actually, she is coming over from EDD to manage the CalSkills project with Patrick Getz's retirement, and that is Mooney Cheney, who's coming over to manage the CalSkills project. So thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, there's a written update in your board packet, but I hope you'll join me in welcoming the newest members of the CWDB team.
Thank you for that update, and welcome certainly to all of the new staff. It's a really important time to be joining this team, so really are excited about all of your support. Any questions for Curtis? Okay. Our next agenda item is a DC update from me. I'll just keep it very high level, and I'll keep it specific to workforce because I'm sure there's, there's even right now, in Congress, what's happening. I think there's a lot to speak about. But regarding workforce in the omnibus, there's a total of $12.5 billion in discretionary appropriation for Department of Labor. It's about 122 million more than what was authorized last year, and $1.4 billion more than the president had requested. So as we can imagine, with the state of our workforce and economy, additional funding and investments in workforce is to be expected. Some specific areas, employment training administration, $99 million more than last year. Our WIOA grants, 26 million more. We also have apprenticeships, which is obviously a big priority of our Governor Gavin Newsom, $10 million more, and youth build, which I know, or Joseph and others are really passionate about, 2 million above last year. Community colleges, strengthening community college training grants, 5 million more. And, I won't get into all of the other specifics, but it's relatively a marginal increase given the size and scope of what our crisis is. We are hopeful that with the newly configured Senate and the incoming presidential administration, that in the next stimulus, that there will be a much more substantial infusion of workforce funding. So stay tuned. And there's really nothing more for me to add to that, I guess, right now. I can send it over now to Tim to share information about our governor's budget proposal.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just real quickly, we also have a new labor secretary, Marty Walsh, the mayor of Boston, is now the Secretary of Labor for the federal. So that's exciting also.
He technically hasn't been confirmed yet, but absolutely, he's been nominated, and obviously a staunch advocate for workers' rights, a great track record, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. And Jamil, I know you serve on the National Workforce Board Association. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we're going to continue to advocate with the new administration and both houses to make sure that we get these fundings and other fundings as well. So we'll stay in touch on that. Thank you, Dr. Farouk.
Thank you, Mr. Dada. Mr. Rainey?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I do want to add to the federal update. I mentioned this morning. The National Governors Association recognized the California Workforce Development Board as an exemplar enhancing job quality for all workers. They developed the state roadmap for workforce recovery and identified the State Workforce Board in particular for its high road training partnerships work. So I want to congratulate our team and you guys for your vision in rolling that out. I think it's been also very important in helping to guide not just workforce in the state. Of course, it's built into the state strategic workforce plan, but I think also the governor's vision around recovery, economic recovery in the state. We can send you a link later, or maybe stick it up in the chat there as soon as I get a chance to. The governor's 21-22 budget was announced, as I think you know well, on Friday. $227 billion spending plan. State revenues were in better shape than anticipated. Obviously, the coronavirus pandemic has had far-reaching negative impacts on the state, but in particular, low-income workers in the most vulnerable Californians were hardest hit. State lawmakers have until June 15 to review the governor's proposal, make changes to it, and vote on it. There actually is a link if you want to take a look at the governor's budget. If you haven't already perused that, there's a link in your agenda that goes to the proposed budget. The Governor Newsom, is pushing a vision of California for all. And I think implicit in that, or explicit in that, in fact, is economic recovery doesn't mean just returning to the same economic inequities and injustices of the past, but actually building a future high road economy that's defined by quality jobs and equity. And our part in that, the State Workforce Development Board, as you all know, we talk about it quite a bit, is driving that high road agenda, including investing in industry-based high road training partnerships. And Aida will talk about that a bit in the initiative updates a little later in the agenda. For our purposes, the State Workforce Development Board, there are two budget items that I want to address, and Abby can help me out with the first one. $25 million for high road training partnerships is in the proposed budget. And also in there is a proposal for a new consolidated workforce development department. So very quickly, the $25 million proposal for HRTP, high road training partnerships, it's called Earn and Learn / apprenticeship. It focuses on industry collaboration, apprenticeship, as I said, and other earn and learn strategies. The sectors, there are specific ones identified in the proposal, in the budget change proposal, that will be up soon publicly, I think. Forestry and agriculture, $6.5 million of the $25 million. Healthcare and dental, $4 million. Trade and logistics, $4 million. IT, which is specifically for cybersecurity and work we're doing with Division of Apprenticeship Standards, $2 million. And then for construction, the biggest chunk of funding, $8.5 million of the $25 million, will expand our regional high road construction careers partnerships that create pathways through MC3 pre-apprenticeship training to formal apprenticeship to state approved apprenticeship and careers in the trades, something that we've been working on very closely with the state building trades and Mr. Smith for some time. And it's really developed into a robust regional initiative that has pathways to careers in the trades in every corner of the state. So when we get a big infrastructure investment from the federal government, we'll have the mechanism to connect disadvantaged workers from low-income communities to those incredible middle-class careers in the trades. The high road approach, just to hit it quickly, Aida, again, we'll talk about it more, focuses on quality jobs, industry partnerships that are sustained and long-term, and equity. So pathways to those jobs for workers from disadvantaged and low-income communities. Abby, is there anything you want to add to that? And we can take
the only thing I'll add, Tim, is that we are hoping that this is an early action item, which means that the decision could be made to spend funds from the current year budget and could be approved as early as March. Not 100% sure that this will be early action, but that would be great because then we can move faster to get the money out to the community.
Great, thank you, Abby. The next one, and we'll take questions and comments just after this item. Department of Better Jobs and Higher Wages is also proposed in the governor's budget. You may recognize this because we've talked about it a lot. It was proposed actually last year. It's the same proposal in this year's budget, consolidates 4 workforce entities within the labor agency into a single department. The state board, us, and the employment training panel are 2 of those that come whole cloth. The Division of Apprenticeship Standards is actually pulled from the Department of Industrial Relations, where that currently sits. And the Workforce Services Branch and the Labor Market Information Division would be pulled from EDD, where they currently sit. It's a 2-step process as proposed. This year is statutory change, meaning consolidating the language into the labor code. The language for these entities is largely in the UI code, but also in the labor code. So it's consolidated into a section of the labor code. So that provides the statutory authority for the new department to operate. The next step is the ledger move, which is actually not till next year. That's the consolidating the funding for the new department. That is not happening this year. That in fact is next year. There are 2 main reasons, just to reiterate, because we've talked about this, I think, quite a bit. First is form should follow function. Workforce Services Branch is a workforce function within the Employment Development Department. This is what how the secretary talks about it. EDD has a primary focus on benefits and taxation, including UI. Workforce Services Branch is a workforce function. Division of Apprenticeship Standards is a workforce function that is within the Department of Industrial Relations, whose primary focus is labor and employment law enforcement. So taking that workforce function out of an entity that is currently really focused on enforcement. This would be a consolidated workforce department that focuses purely on workforce, industry partnerships and regional talent development, pathways to quality jobs, equity, and income mobility for people who most need good jobs. The second is system alignment for scale and impact. And we've talked about this a lot as well. Most program funding is local and it's scattered among multiple agencies and programs at the local level with different missions, different program requirements, different ways of collecting data and presenting data. So it's very difficult for companies and workers to navigate the complexity of that, what tends to be fragmentation. And we've pushed this fix at the local level. In fact, federal law kind of pushes that fix at the local level in the form of AJCCs, one-stop career centers, but it can't just be there. So this is a very first step in consolidating the workforce entities and programs at the state level and aligning those programs under the same leadership and vision in that single workforce entity. So those are the 2 pieces that are primarily focused on the State Workforce Board, although not exclusively State Workforce Board, obviously, in the state budget. Curtis, did I miss anything on the new department that we need to highlight?
I think you covered it well, Tim.
Okay, Mr. Chair, you want to
Thank you.
take comments?
Yeah, we have, we want to start with Bob, Bruce, and then Joseph.
Okay, thanks. I don't know if this is the exact right time to bring this up, but it seems to follow. You know, we had a lot of discussion in the last 6 months or so around equity, and the budget seems to reflect, and the training seems to reflect our discussions around that. But you know, it's important to talk about and to notice again, because of the pandemic, the change of skills that are required, and not just what we experienced over the past year, but what's going to happen in the future and how the skills are different. Higher technology, the lack of brick and mortar places. People are still, even after the pandemic, people are still going to be working from home or from other places. I think as a board and as leaders in the state, we have to recognize the change of skills that's happening. In healthcare, of course, my expertise, not so much in other areas, but at least in healthcare, you know, the use of clinicals and clinical experience has really been a problem for the past year. We're going to land up with some major shortages, but even when those folks come back to get those kind of experiences, the experience is going to be different of how we work with the public and how we work in our sector. So it's important as we move and look at the budgets and the dollars and the high road partnerships that we also address the difference in skills that's going to be necessary moving forward. Very different from what we talked about a year ago. So I think it's just important for us to bring those issues up.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
Thank you for sharing that. Bruce?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. All great points. Mine's a simpler, different question. And Tim, just wondering if you anticipate or are aware of any resistance or headwinds buffering against the notion of a reorganization in a year that'll be busy looking at pandemic recovery and whatnot? Just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. This was proposed last year, and there was concern, and the reason it didn't go through last year, there was concern about taking on such an ambitious project at a time when EDD really needed to focus on unemployment insurance, obviously. So that was held over for, I think, primarily that reason. So I think those considerations are still there. Those concerns are still there, although we haven't heard from legislative staff any specific concerns at this point. When we first proposed this last year, we had a number of letters of support across the board from organized labor, from business. So there was pretty, and from workforce development, from kind of key partners in the workforce development world. So there was a lot of support for the consolidation of the entities into one department, and not any opposition that I was aware of.
Thank you. Joseph?
Well, first off, Happy New Year's. It's good to see your faces, and I think we all would benefit from a virtual workforce happy hour or something like that at some point in time. I mean, there's a lot of work that was accomplished last year. I think, you know, we should have some type of celebration just to acknowledge it and just give ourselves a chance to kind of decompress, because there's a lot of work ahead of us. But my question for Tim was updated proposed org chart. Just interested in seeing if there's any proposed impacts to the state board. Like, is the state board's responsibility increasing? Like, are we, like, is the division of apprenticeship standards coming under your direction? And then the associated commissions that are connected to some of these other departments, like what happens to them, like with the consolidation? It would just be helpful to see a visual representation of what the new updated version of what the new proposed department looks like. And then, you know, again, is our role expanding, or are we getting access to, you know, additional capacity and resources that we didn't have before?
All great questions. We can send you as soon as we can what the new organizational chart would look like. It's not quite final and it's not public yet, but as soon as we can, we'll send it to you to take a look at. The role of the State Workforce Development Board has been and is really focused on policy development and guidance and kind of setting the vision for the state, and then helping to use the various mechanisms to drive at that vision and implement it. That'll remain the role of the State Workforce Development Board. And I think the opportunity here is to have greater influence over the larger system of workforce development within the Labor and Workforce Development Agency. So the idea is that all those different entities would, instead of being under different separate leadership within the agency, would be under the same leadership and guided by the same common vision. The State Workforce Board itself, you guys in the full board, the board will stay intact and will continue to be staffed by the State Workforce Development Board staff. In terms of the executive office of the new department, that is still being sorted out. So I would get ahead of myself if I probably said any more about that. It's still being discussed, hasn't been finalized.
Thank you. Thank you all for those questions and those responses. As Tim said, we should be expecting a lot more details as the legislature and their members have a chance to process and react to this specific context, even though, as he mentioned, this had been proposed last year as well. We'll now shift to our initiative updates. We have several timely efforts to discuss. We're going to do a quick round and do it by different categories. So we'll start with the high road field updates led by Aida Cardenas.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or late morning. Good to see folks. So I'll just do a quick update around some of the field work and our high road initiatives. Under High Road Construction Careers, on November 12th, we participated in Apprenticeship Week and hosted an event paving the high road to a resilient economy, and really were able to showcase the partnerships there around high road construction careers and the work there, and also participated in a roundtable with Labor Secretary Sue on the apprenticeship stories and voices. So hearing directly from workers that have been impacted by apprenticeship work, and highlighted also participants from our HRCC initiative. The SB1 contracts have been executed, and we're waiting for legal approval to put out an RFA of $5.6 million for HRCCs with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund resources that we have for the California Climate investments. So we hope to be able to put some more resources out there. There is, as mentioned, just a great need, because what we thought we needed a year ago to even 6 months ago in terms of being able to provide training and make it accessible to workers and access to quality jobs, it's shifting, right? It shifts based on our current crisis. So we have our field team and our specialist, Mark Cohen, working closely with the projects to understand what the needs are, to see how we can best support them, not just leave them out there with the resources and figuring it out on their own. So have our field team really with an ear to the ground to gain a better understanding of how we can best support projects on the ground. On the high road training partnerships, we putting out $19 million in GGRF funds, and we've done it we're doing it in 2 rounds. The first was a closed process where we gave out $10 million. That's been posted on our website, and those include, we really try to look at a geographic spread, as well as the high road training partnership elements. And so the projects there are in public transit, janitorial, water, electric bus manufacturing, public service, hospitality, healthcare. Actually, our healthcare project includes retraining and training for virtual health services, which is now a great need. So we're able to, just tagging on to the comments from earlier, and also includes a project in microgrids and energy storage, food production, agriculture, public utilities, and logistics and manufacturing, transportation in the Inland Empire, taking a more of a regional approach in that area. So that totaled to $10 million. We also put out an open RFA for the remainder of the resource of the $9 million. And we're in the process right now. We've done our review and scoring of those applications. And so we'll be making those recommendations hopefully this week. And we hope to have approval and awards done in the month of February. So in addition to that, we're working with the, as mentioned before, the Department of Education grant for high-road projects, expanding some, initiating some work and expanding the water utility HRTP into the Inland Empire, working with tree trimming, transit, expanding our transit work throughout the state, and also it also includes Fresno's high road construction careers, and also working with the Workforce and Economic Development branch with WED around establishing standards around manufacturing, as we see that as an industry that is growing. So the field team will be working with all of these projects in addition to the future projects that will be awarded. All of these are still in the contracting phase, but we expect to start meeting with the projects in February prior to their contracts initiating, just so that we can get a better understanding on, given the current situation, how we can best support them and how we can really connect links to local boards, to other initiatives, to other resources, or do some support them with some of the relationship building and really understanding what their needs are. We're also working with Berkeley Labor Center and UCLA Labor Center to think about, as they've been involved in the HRTP initiative since its inception, and working specifically with Berkeley Labor Center around creating a high road lab, so that they can provide support to the incoming projects. But how can we create a structure where we can leverage the expertise of existing and more mature projects, and really be able to support and build capacity for new projects coming on, and really be able to showcase the field of practice and be able to pull tools, resources, best practices, structures, things that we can learn from, that we can use to share with the broader community on how we can, how we all learn to build out these high road training partnerships. Each industry looks very different. Where things are, it's just aside from the industry looking different, the way that the partnership structures may look different as well. And so we have to be flexible to understand, like, it's not going to just look one way, but really we want to make sure we don't lose the spirit of what we're trying to achieve, which is equity, climate mitigation, and quality jobs. And that, as Tim mentioned, that we're building out these partnerships that are going to live beyond these investments, right? There's really bringing folks to the table and establish a structure that everybody believes in and that everybody will continue to invest in the future, including industry investments. So we're being thoughtful about having a diverse portfolio. Again, if we want to establish this field of practice and being able to look at different geographies, looking at communities that are underfunded or industries that are undervalued, and how can we use a workforce strategy or an investment to really set a standard within different job classifications to upskill and to hopefully create better jobs in those industries, as well as looking at regions that may not have the same access to state resources and really need investment in their region. So trying to really spread out throughout the state, and it's been a journey of learning, right, and learning from different groups on what their needs are, different industries, different communities, and their ideas around how to address equity and how to build better jobs in their areas. So we expect to continue to learn from this field of practice. And so hopefully we will be able to make some announcements of our next round of funding under the California Climate Investments.
Thank you so much for that update. And like you said, this is an opportunity for us to invest directly in regions, California for all, throughout the whole state, and have infrastructure that can, like you said, sustain beyond these efforts for quality jobs, for these communities. Thank you, Aida. Our next update is Joelle Hurst, program implementation, and we'll take questions at the end after this next one. But if you do have questions, again, feel free to flag it on the chat. Thank you. Joelle.
Yeah, great. Thank you. In addition to the program updates that Aida gave around all of the high road work, the two others that I'd like to mention is the regional plan implementation grants should be announced early February. Those are upstairs with the labor agency as of this morning for sign off. And the Workforce Accelerator Fund 9.0, we have $7.4 million to put out. It's in its final stages of review to release, hopefully by the end of January, first week of February. So again, the two initiatives that have RFA or solicitations coming out are Workforce Accelerator Fund, and then the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, High Road Construction Careers. That one will also be released by the end of the month.
Perfect. Thank you, Joelle. And our last update is policy, legislation, and research. Marissa Clark.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'll do a quick overview of some WIOA policy guidance updates that we have in the queue. The final directive for the regional and local planning guidance is should be posted very soon. We have two directives that just finished their public comment related to WIOA. One is a local area subsequent designation and local board recertification. This directive is issued every 2 years, and it's used to verify that local areas and local boards meet certain statutory requirements related to performance, membership, planning, and fiscal integrity in order to continue operating. So we'll be addressing the public comments that came in during that and then issuing the final directive. A second draft directive that just closed for public comment is Ajcc Certification. So under WIOA, local boards have to conduct an independent and objective evaluation of their AJCCs once every 3 years using certain criteria and procedures that we issue in a directive. So now that that's closed, we're working collaboratively with EDD to address the public comments, and we'll be issuing a final directive. And the last update is around waivers. I don't think I've mentioned them in this forum yet before, but WIOA allows states to request temporary waivers of certain statutory requirements that the state believes will improve job seeker and employer outcomes. So a while back, we got input and suggestions from local boards on potential waiver ideas. And then we ended up putting forward 4 different waivers formally to the Department of Labor. And they responded by approving 2 of them and denying 2 of them. However, the 2 that they denied, they only denied because they said that they thought that the flexibility already existed within the statute, and so the waiver was unnecessary. So it was still good news. But the 4 waivers we put forward, I'll go through quickly. The first one is a waiver that would allow up to 30% of funds to be spent on transitional jobs. So this raises the existing statutory cap in WIOA that says only 10% of adult and dislocated worker funds can be spent on transitional jobs to now allow up to 30% where it's needed. That one was approved. The second waiver that was approved will now allow a reimbursement of up to 90% of on-the-job training costs for businesses with 50 or fewer employees. This will raise the existing statutory cap that only allows reimbursement of up to 50% of the OJT costs to now allowing reimbursement of up to 90% of OJT costs for those small businesses. The other 2 that were denied, but only denied because DOL said they think the flexibility already existed, which was great news, is one is a waiver to allow supportive services to be included among the list of follow-up services that are included to adult and dislocated workers. This will allow local boards to provide supportive services to adults or dislocated workers who are placed in subsidized employment or unsubsidized employment, excuse me, for up to a year after they're placed. To give just another little extra amount of support if it's needed. That one, they said, we believe we already have the flexibility, so waivers unnecessary. And the other one is the waiver allowing funds to be utilized for business capitalization. And this one, we had sought the waiver to allow local boards to use funds for various layoff aversion strategies to help companies as they were transitioning employees to telework through purchase of software or equipment that they may need to work from home. The law was a little vague on this, so we weren't sure if we needed a waiver or not. We decided to put it forward just in case, and DOL came back and said they thought that flexibility already existed, which was good news. We have one more pending waiver that just went out for public comment. All waivers have to go out for public comment to the general public, and this one is related to out-of-school youth. So this waiver, we haven't submitted it to the Department of Labor yet. We still have to go through the comments, but this waiver would allow local boards who provide services to in-school youth who are involved in the foster care system, the juvenile justice system, or experiencing homelessness. They can count towards a 75% out-of-school youth funding requirement. For those of you who aren't familiar, there's a requirement in WIOA that for the youth formula funds, 75% has to be spent on out-of-school youth, which was a really, great intended switch, but some areas are saying that there are sometimes some trade-offs when they're trying to serve certain in-school youth who have barriers, who may be kind of on the cusp of turning to out-of-school youth, and they want a little bit more flexibility where appropriate to kind of prevent that disconnection. And so this flexibility was actually shown to increase overall enrollments when it was utilized in the LA area. The Los Angeles Performance Partnership pilot, which was made up of a lot of local boards in LA, used this flexibility under a targeted waiver from DOL and actually saw a pretty significant increase in enrollments for youth involved in foster care, juvenile justice, or experiencing homelessness. So we thought this would be an interesting one to put forward and see how it could potentially impact other local areas, depending on their needs and populations. So we are currently working with EDD to develop a directive that will contain an application process for local boards to access the waivers. This is a little bit different than how we've done it in the past, but we hope this will allow us to be a lot more effective and accurate when we track how the waivers are actually being implemented and if they are actually being effective and impacting the areas we want them to impact, because we then have to report that back to the Department of Labor, but we also want to know that for our own policy development reasons. So that's just a quick update on waivers and a few directives. That's all I had.
Thank you so much for that update. Does anybody have any questions or comments to any of our three speakers, Joelle, Aida, and Marissa? Okay.
I do have a comment, and I appreciate, this is Joseph, the update and the flexibility to do some work with the in-school youth. Do you all see this as an opportunity to do maybe some blended funding with the Department of Education? To leverage their dollars to, if we're providing services to an in-school youth, how can the Department of Ed also fund some of the work so that way it's not all our dollars? I know locally we require our CBOs to have a 25% match, but maybe a conversation with the state superintendent to see it. I mean, if you think it makes sense, it's just a question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think that is, as you're saying, when more funds are able to be spent on that in-school youth, it gives a lot more opportunity for collaborating with education funding. I think that would probably be a case-by-case basis. It'd be interesting to see if there are potential for that on a statewide level. I know the pilot, there are a couple partnership pilots that came from DOL. I believe that the LA group was actually approved under, and I think some of the things they were piloting was more flexibility in combining funding streams. I'm not sure what the outcomes were of that. So I think definitely starting at a local level and maybe finding some best practices there on how it works. And if there's ability for us to look at it at the state level, I think we'd definitely be open.
Yeah, because Marissa, think about the Career Pathways Trust and the work that was done around the Linked Learning Pathways. If we can get, say, every kid that's in the Linked Learning Pathway a summer job, the idea is that their success levels would increase. So if you do that just across the state, if you're in a pathway, it should come along with a summer job. And that's currently not taking place right now. And so I think, with our technical support, we can help the Department of Education kind of accelerate and get these kids connected to job opportunities before they graduate versus waiting.
Right. And by chance, do you know if that is there a statutory barrier to that, or is it potentially just kind of lack of coordination?
I mean, it's just not been the focus of the board. We've always, we focus on out of school youth. And so the locally they say, well, education has their own money, let them spend it, but we have the expertise. And so if we use our money to influence, we can capture these kids earlier, the young adults earlier, and get them connected to our system. And then, it seems like it would be a great study. And then if you talk about folks like James Irvine Foundation with their Better Careers initiatives and get them to, do a public-private partnership with us, we can kind of study it and see if it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think there's a ton of potential. I think you're 100% right.
Thank you.
I see Pradeep. I feel like he's ready to say something also in response. Joseph, Pradeep.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Dr. Farouk. To not address the question directly, other than that, I think there has to be more coordination, as Marissa pointed out, a couple of projects that we're working on from the DOL, but we just, through the ESSA, federal ESSA funds, we received that $45 million for community school partnerships. And we're now going through a process of reviewing the applications. And in the governor's most recent budget, through Prop 98 funds, they have in that funding is now at 245 million. Now, obviously that depends whether it'll go through a whole negotiation process, but the expanded, the previous 45 million was based on building new community schools, whereas this one is also new and expanded, and therefore I think what Mr. Williams is saying, I think is appropriate. It has opportunity for collaboration between two agencies and look at in-school youth and also looking at expanded learning. We have a big effort in expanded learning. Michael Funk in our department works a lot on that. So I think, long story short, I think we have a definite opportunity for collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Pradeep. Bob?
Yeah, just a quick question for Marissa. When you talked about the waiver, one of the waivers for reimbursement moved from 50% to 90% for small businesses. Is there additional funds for that? And how many dollars are involved in that? Because that would obviously be a higher cost. If we paid, I think the 90% is good, but does that take away from the number of programs that we could provide? Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it is kind of a larger overarching trade-off sometimes that happens when we have these limited funds, like quantity, quality type of thing. There is an existing funds. It's just flexibility within their existing formula allocations. So their normal training dollars they'd be spending, it just allows them, if appropriate, it's ultimately always up to the local boards, but it allows them the flexibility if they want to engage with a small business to do OJT, and perhaps they think that the small business warrants more support, they're able to provide more funding for it. But unfortunately, there isn't a separate pot there.
Right. Is there a limit for the number of, for the amount of dollars that can be paid to a person on reimbursement?
I don't believe there's any statutory. I believe that's local, typically a local policy in a lot of these types of caps. Off the top of my head, I don't know of anything in either statute or regulation that limits the dollar amount. However, I know in various WIOA policies, some local areas have their own caps based on their own funding streams and potentially other local funds and whatnot. So it's all kind of locally driven.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you everyone for those questions and responses. We'll now move to our next agenda item, which is other business. So I want to share that our colleague, Joseph Williams, he had proposed an ad hoc committee on youth, and for us to agendize this at a future meeting focusing on youth policy. Disconnected youth, those neither that are in school or work, are a major concern, obviously, for society and for all of us in the workforce system. They tend to be higher chances of being in foster or involving the justice system, or being at risk of homelessness in general. We understand it's our policy that any ad hoc committee we create should have a clear purpose, timeline, and defined outcomes. So I've asked our colleague Joseph Williams to work with me and our state board staff on developing a formal concept that we can share with the full board. Joseph, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you captured it. Appreciate the opportunity, and hope you all will consider supporting. Us just working on this and seeing what kind of guidance and ideas that we can provide for the local youth councils.
Are we also including in school as well as out of school youth for that ad hoc group?
I think the idea would be just to follow the statutory age requirement for WIOA. So
16.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we definitely want it to be aligned with our current policies, even though obviously the need and the bigger issues are obviously start much earlier in terms of the need for intervention.
Yeah, well, the issue, that we all face, particularly now, there's such an increase in reentry population, and the folks coming back from prisons are so young that it's a major issue in a lot of our inner city groups, that when we talk about youth, it's almost that we have to expand to make sure we include that population.
Yeah. And the idea of the committee is just that it gives us an opportunity to kind of study some of the issues, bring them back to the full board for consideration, and just, I don't know how many local youth councils we have, but we could provide guidance, and try to really look at how we have a holistic youth system for the whole state. And so this committee could really provide the full board with some recommendations on how that could look.
Thank you again for your passion, Joseph, on these issues throughout your whole career. We appreciate that. There's any further questions or comments regarding this topic? Okay. Our last portion of our agenda is regarding dates for board meetings, for our board meeting and our next executive committee meeting. They are going to be on our website, but I just want to say that now also that our next full board meeting is January 27th from 10 to 1 p.m. Obviously, depending on time, it could end earlier, and our next executive committee meeting is May 11th from 10 to noon. So please note that in your calendars. For public comment now, Curtis, have you received anything? Or Tim?
No, I'll defer to Clemente, who is monitoring the public.
There was an email that was received yesterday, and it's related to benefits. The subject line, claim suspended without cause. Hello, I was laid off in August and have exhausted my savings waiting for EDD to pay me. I have spoken to CalFresh and they tell me I only qualify for $20 a month food stamps due to the amount I'm supposed to receive from EDD. I'd like to know what you expect tax-paying voting citizens to do. What the hell would you recommend? I have tried calling the phone number several times, and when I'm able to get through, most of the time the phones are overloaded. No one at the call center can give me any information as to why the claim was stopped or when it will be paid. I have verified my information with them several times, and I'd like to know just who in the hell is going to be accountable for this. This is unacceptable. You have 1.5 million hungry people in the same situation as me, and people are very, very upset. The state of California and this department has ruined me, and I have no other resource but to end my life because no one can help me. End of message.
Wow. Well, we certainly our heart goes out, to this gentleman who issued that statement. The nature of that topic is the jurisdiction of EDD. I hope our staff can connect with EDD to ensure that there's a timely response to that person and any other assistance that person might need, with their situation. Is there anything else, Tim, that you want to add to that?
No, that's thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll follow up appropriately to that message.
Yeah, please, we'll respond immediately to that. Thank you, Clemente, for the public comment reading. And if there's nothing else on the agenda, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Bob, second by Bruce. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned at 11 a.m. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.